They say hunting and fishing can be dated back more than 2 million years. Throughout the years, the historic angler and hunter has steadily evolved into the avid hunter and angler that we know and love today. Welcome to the Outdoor Defiance podcast. As you listen, you will hear comical stories, companies talking about their products, researchers talking about their research, and overall ways to help you become a better outdoorsman. Welcome to today's episode.
What's up, everybody? On today's episode, we get to talk with John Hardman from Hardman Fishing Adventures. We get to dive into topics like fly fishing tactics, what he looks for when he goes to a new piece of water, how he finds this type of water with these types of fish in it, the Western Trout Initiative, stock trout versus native trout fisheries. We chop it up about a bunch of different things, just fly fishing. Then we get to go into some of his neat trips that he went on, Idaho bull trout, the Gila trout, and Apache trout, and we get to just sit there and chop it up about fly fishing. John is a phenomenal human. It was such an honor to get to sit down and talk to him and pick his brain about fly fishing and how he lands these big fish and how he goes about going after these big fish. So I hope you enjoy John Hardman.
Well, John, thank you for joining us today for this episode. I'm ready to hear about your most recent trips. And before we get started into those, will you kind of tell us how you got started into fly fishing?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons I got started into fly fishing. I mean, my dad got me my first fly rod when I was really young. Didn't use it a ton, mostly because at the time I was doing a lot of like smallmouth bass fishing, and just mostly warm water fishing. And it's just not all that effective. Or, I would just like poppers or something, didn't catch a ton of fish, did it a couple times, caught a few fish. And I was like, yeah, this is silly. I'm not doing this anymore. And then when I like got really heavy into trout fishing, I don't remember what someone said to me at one point, like, yeah, it's cool that you caught that fish on a spinning rod, but I bet you couldn't do it on a fly rod. And I was like, no. Yeah, all right. I could do it on a fly rod. It's not that hard. You guys are ridiculous. And then I tried it and it actually was that hard. But then I had like kind of said I could do it. So then I was like really stubborn. I was like, no, I'm actually going to be able to do this. And it took a while. It was a steep learning curve, but I eventually got it. But I didn't have I hear people like a lot of times talk about like having like mentors in the outdoor space from like a fly fishing standpoint. Mm-hmm. I had none. I didn't even really I'm totally self-taught. I didn't even really read books on fly fishing. Matter of fact, I'm reading like my first book ever on fly fishing, like currently, didn't really watch YouTube videos, didn't really do anything. I was just kind of like stubbornly went out and just started doing it. I think that's because it's kind of the type of learner I am too. Like I got to do it anyways. But no one taught me. My dad didn't really fly fish either. So he wasn't like a great resource for my fly fishing obsession. Like he would fly fish, but he would like throw like a weightless Joe's fly spinner and just like hold it in the current. So it wasn't even really fly fishing. So it was just me and my brother Andrew were just like out there doing our best, trying to like learn how to catch a trout on the fly. And like, if you spend enough time on the water, you eventually figure it out.
Right.
But yeah, that's how I got started. It's not like some crazy story, but it was kind of just me and my brother just being stubborn and being told that we couldn't do it and wanting to prove that we could. So, yeah.
When did it build to your channel?
So actually the coolest thing is if you look at like the very earliest videos on the channel was still when we were kind of, I would say like transitioning over to being more fly fishermen than we were spin fishermen. Some of the first videos on the channel still, we were using a spinning rod, and I believe I've kept a lot of those on there or up on the channel just to show that I think fly fishing a lot of times gets this like stigma of being like this elite sport. It's like super expensive to get into and like only like the really snobby, like rich people fly fish. And it's like, dude, we were like some like poor kids from West Virginia. Like we grew up like up a holler and like a double wide, It's like we didn't have any money, dude. We were out there in our Crocs wading through the creek with a fly rod. And I think that makes it more realistic, And even today we have some videos where you like spin versus fly just because I still have a spinning rod and stuff. I still smallmouth bass fish with a spinning rod and stuff. So I think the channel, I started it in like maybe, I think it was 2018, had the first couple videos, and we were still using some spinning rods back then. So the transition, or like when we really started using fly rods, was probably had to be like in that 2017, 2018 time period. So yeah, I mean, it's only been, what's it, 2025? So it's only been like 7 or 8 years that we've been fly fishing. But it's all about the time you spend on the water.
Yep.
If you fly fished for 3 decades, but you fly fish twice, 3 times a year for 3 decades, I've done that in a month. So it's kind of selling it short to say I've only fly fished seriously for like 7 or 8 years, but it's also partially true because that is all that's all as long as I've been doing it. So
what kind of hit off your channel and got you to grow the fastest?
Just trout fishing in general. There were a couple videos, like I got lucky and caught some really big fish somewhat early on, which of course that always sticks. Same like if you can get a really big deer, like obviously that's going to attract people. That was part of it. I think maybe just, I don't really remember. The first video that got like hundreds of thousands of views was actually just like a stupid dry fly video in a small creek. It wasn't even like nothing crazy happened, didn't catch a big fish, no reason for that video to get views, and it did. But the first video that got views like consistently over time was a really big brown trout. But yeah, and honestly, the video that first popped off and got the most views was a fly fishing video. And it was mostly, I think it got as many views as it did because people were telling me that I wasn't fly fishing correctly. Like I vividly remember reading through the comments and they were like, cast with your wrist, not with your elbow, or like you did that's a horrible cast or whatever. And I was like, dude, I'm catching fish. Who cares? I remember it's like, like getting mad at people. I was like, man, it doesn't matter. Now, granted, I look back at it now, it's like, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing, but still it's like,
yeah.
So
yeah, that's what I like. It's funny to see the people that like bait the haters in so their videos will pop off, And I've done that some on some of the shorts, and it's always funny because when people start getting real mad, I'm like, well, you don't know you're doing me some good right now. So.
Dude, I don't even have to bait people. I can just tell the truth for like, I just went down to New Mexico and, I was catching Gila trout and Apache trout as part of like the Western Native Trout Challenge. And both of those fish are actually, I think the Apache trout just got removed from the endangered species list, but the Gila trout's still on the list as a threatened species. And a lot of times they keep them on the list to get grant money and stuff like that so that they can like create habitat for these fish. But realistically, like a lot of those cutthroat, or they're not even cutthroat, but a lot of those like Western trout species that are quote unquote threatened are threatened because they're native to one creek or like the headwaters of one river. So like there can only be so many anyways. And anyways, long story short, you can legally fish for these fish because there's a handful of creeks that they're just doing overly well in. And Fish and Game have been like, you know what, we can allow people to fish for these fish. And like some of the creeks, you can even keep them. You can keep 2 of them. But then I made a video on it and people are like, I can't believe you're fishing for a threatened species. Like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. You're letting your ego get in the way. And I'm like, dude, you guys not do just like just a tiny bit of research on the Gila trout before you leave these comments? Because it's really not that serious,
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
I was going to say, I just watched that video and it's kind of funny. One of the comments he made was, for the first time, it's like coming easy because you were catching those fish in those little small creeks like that. And you were not for the first time, but like this time it's coming easy for me. And you were just slamming them.
Yeah.
And,
I was just going to say, because like sometimes like the hardest part of like catching some of those fish is just figuring out where they are. Yeah. And sometimes like it's not great, or like you might be working on outdated, like the data might be from like 2012. And there was some reason the fish aren't in there anymore. Like the Fish and Game might have put them in there and they didn't reproduce for whatever reason, or like fires are a big thing out there. Like if it gets burned, maybe there's water temp issues, any number of things. And we had trouble like we fished one creek, or for the Gila trout, we fished like one creek and didn't catch any. And then we went to, we bailed and hiked like 3 miles back into another creek, which was an awful idea. But when we were hiking down, there were 2 people coming up that just got done fishing the creek. And they're like, hey, it's really skinny water. Like it's pretty skinny, but if you can get up there without spooking the fish, you can catch as many as you want. And I was like, that's music to my ears.
Yeah.
And yeah, we went down there and just like, I mean, every time your fly hit the water, a fish would eat because the water was low and there was just so many fish in that creek. It was just fully loaded down with Gila. So it was cool. It was cool.
We had a similar experience, a secret spot that our buddy in Colorado has that we go to. I only got to go once. Taylor's gone, twice now?
Yeah.
I mean, it was just every cast.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there every cast. You got to hike in like 2 miles down, 2 miles back up.
Yeah.
It's every cast you're catching a cutthroat or a brook trout. And it's just boom, boom.
Yeah. And some spots are like 4 foot wide.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
fun to me though. I like that. I like that type of fishing because it's not only like you said, you hike 2 miles. Like that's not actually too terribly bad, but like you might be hiking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 miles one way. In the country you get to see on the hike in, and then being down there, like, because if you're hiking 6 miles one way to get down into some valley, like the amount of people down there, and there's just not many people down there. So you're alone, especially when the fishing's easy. It's just like you're slamming fish, you're having a good time, and then like the hike's the hardest part.
Yeah. I want to say that hike's pushing 4, Gunner. I think Russ said
I don't
when it
remember.
was from the trailhead, when they could drive to the trailhead, it was 2. But since they keep moving it back because people keep taking ATVs down there and tearing up ground, put it to the main road. And I think it's 3.5, 4. But that hike is rough. It's straight down and you zigzag. It's fine when you go down. It's all easy. You have to turn around and come back up. When you're talking about these Oklahoma boys that are corn fed, you take a lot of breaks because it's a high altitude place too. So
that's my problem. Now I live in West Virginia. We have some steep mountains. Like they'll kick your butt real quick. But I like our highest point in the state's like 4,800 feet in elevation, and most of the stuff we're fishing is like not much over 3,500.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're going out to Colorado, Wyoming, any of those states, when you're pushing that 8,000 plus feet in elevation, it doesn't matter how good a shape you're in. It's gonna suck.
Yeah, I don't know how high up that one is, but I know getting there, it takes a couple hours just taking the zigzag back roads all the way up the mountains.
It's high enough that it was like 32 degrees when we woke up in camp in July.
Yeah.
We woke up. Oh yeah, we woke up.
We were above the Aspens.
Yeah,
where we camped.
Yeah, we woke up and there was a herd of mule deer just staring at us.
Yeah,
because I had one buddy was in the hammock, one was in the truck, and me and Taylor just blew up an air mattress and we're just sleeping on the ground out in the middle of underneath the tree. So
yeah, it was sweet.
It sounds sweet.
You mentioned a little bit ago, you said the Western Native Trout Challenge. Will we kind of go in detail what that is and have you completed it or?
No, I haven't completed it. It's a challenge I found out a few years ago. It's actually, I think it's like the Western Native Trout Initiative. It's like a nonprofit organization that you can even donate to. So I'd like, if you guys are into conservation, or anybody listening to the podcast is like super into like native trout species and stuff, especially out west. They're like a nonprofit, and you can donate to them, and they do a lot of work with like habitat restoration and stuff for various native trout out west. And they made this challenge. I assume they did it. I don't actually know. I know they're associated with it, so I assume they had a heavy hand in it, where there's this challenge that you catch every trout native to the Western US in their native range. So like, like I mentioned, like the Gila trout in New Mexico, the Apache trout in Arizona, Colorado's got like the Colorado River cutthroat and the Rio Grande cutthroat. And then like went to Wyoming, and they had like the fine spotted Snake River cutthroat, the Yellowstone cutthroat, you know, stuff like that. California, you got the golden trout, the Lahontan cutthroat, you know, all of them. But the trick is you have to catch them in their native range. So I saw that and I was like, seems like the greatest idea ever.
Yeah.
But all these fish, it'd be cool to catch them, and then to like have to catch them in their native range, it forces you to travel around. So you're not just like, oh, like, I mean, you can go to some of these states and catch, like, you can catch a golden trout in Wyoming or Montana, but like to have to travel to California and go into the golden trout wilderness to catch the like native golden trout is just, to me, I was like, that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah,
like,
that is a cool concept.
Yeah, it gave me like an excuse to travel and like chase these native species where they originated, rather than like just catching them wherever they might have been stocked at some point by people. So I decided to start doing that. I think I did New Mexico, Arizona. I've done California. I didn't like do it for this series, but I've been to California and done the golden trout and stuff like that. I just did Wyoming. I just got back from Idaho. Did it partially for Idaho. So I'm just kind of working my way through the Western US and trying to catch, native trout in their native range.
Oklahoma rainbows aren't on that list.
No, unfortunately, Oklahoma does not have any native trout. So I will probably not be going through there. Although I did have a series idea or a series concept to try to like catch a trout in every state.
Yeah.
Because I was looking it up, I was like, it's actually somewhat feasible if I count, like, obviously, like Florida doesn't have the trout that I'm used to.
Right.
But they have sea trout, which isn't technically the same species, but I could just be like, it says it's a trout. So
yeah,
probably the same thing for like Louisiana and like Mississippi and stuff. But no, I only say that because I did look up Oklahoma. I was like, does Oklahoma have any trout?
We've got brown trout.
There are a few places you can catch trout in Oklahoma. I'm like, okay, so Oklahoma I could do.
And I will say this, although they are stocked and everything, you'll feel, I mean, you're fishing rivers and stuff, like you'll feel like, you know, you're trout fishing, you know. And so we've got like the Lower Illinois, the Blue River. Blue River's real slow fishing. You probably won't like Blue River.
Yeah, no.
I think you'd like Broken Bow if you went certain times of the year when it's not busy, because they've got browns and they've got rainbows. So I think you can go after some browns there.
I think Oklahoma would be one that like I would do on the way to like Arkansas or something. Yeah, I've been to Arkansas and fished like the White River and stuff, and that place is incredible.
Yeah, we've been there a few times.
Yeah, I caught a 16-pound brown trout out of the white.
Yeah, the whites just got stupidly large fish. So
stupid. I didn't fly fish for him. I caught him at night using like a drift rig, and 16.4 pounds. I've got.
Yeah, I don't remember where I stayed, but they had like lights on, like on the riverbank. They would automatically shut off at like 10 p.m. or something. But I remember just going down there and staring in the water at the lights, because all these little fish would sit up, and every once in a while I'd see like this giant brown come up and like scare all the other fish off. And I was like, dang, if I could just catch one of those fish.
It's ridiculous the types of browns they have in there.
Yeah, I think that river you have a distinct disadvantage if you're fly fishing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because it's such a big river and the current's so swift and the water's so deep. And like I'll be out there and I'll watch like the spin guys like floating whatever they're using, live bait or whatever it is. And they can just like dredge the bottom of that deep river channel. And like there's just no fly rod or setup that's going to get down that deep, unfortunately. So I'm forced to like fish the banks and just pray that one of those big fish is actively up hunting in the middle of the day, which probably isn't going to happen. But yeah.
There's one guy that wants to do an episode, right, Gunner, that you talked to, that goes out in the night with the big rats, topwater rats.
A lot of people do that. White River is one of the big places that people, I mean, I've never done it personally, because the guy that I was fishing with at the time, he didn't have lights rigged up on his boat, so we couldn't take it out at night. But I've heard that it's just stupid at night, because that's when those fish, like brown trout, are nocturnal for the most part, especially the bigger fish are nocturnal. So that's when they hunt. So if you go out at night with like a big mouse or even just big streamers or something like that, that's when you catch like the stupidly large fish, like you said, like a 16-pounder. That's when you're going to catch those types of fish because that's just when they're active.
Yeah, you can see in all the pictures on White River, they're all at night when they have the world-class fish in their hands, it seems like.
It's either the only time you see them during the day is if it's some guy with a spinning rod, probably on live bait or something. The fly guys that are catching them are always at night. Rarely do you see like a really, truly big brown out of the White River during the daylight. It depends on what you say truly big is. Some people might be like, oh, I've caught a 26. It's like, yeah, I'm not saying you can't catch a big brown during the day, but I'm saying that like the majority of them are caught at night. So,
what you've mentioned this a couple times about your Idaho trip. Kind of tell us what you did and how it went.
Yeah, so Idaho is one of only a handful of places that you can legally target bull trout, which is another fish that is a threatened species technically, but it's threatened for a whole host of reasons. Mostly has to do with dams that they put up on some of those major rivers. Same reason like steelhead migrations and stuff like that are going down. But Idaho is one of the few places you can actually legally target bull trout. And they actually have a great population of bull trout. Like they are native and live in pretty much every river system in Idaho, at least in like central and northern Idaho. And so that's literally why I went out there. I went out there specifically for bull trout. I'd only ever targeted bull trout one other time, and that was in Oregon last winter. And they're just like, to me, probably the cool one of, if not the coolest fish in America, in my opinion, because they're cool. They're a char. They're not even a trout. It's kind of like out east, our only native trout is a brook trout, and a brook trout is a char, and the bull trout is also a char. So to me, like there's some, I don't know. I think I have a fondness for char, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
But no, they're just like this giant predatory meat eating, like migratory fish. They can get 40 plus inches in length, and they eat everything. I mean, you hook like a 12, 15, 16 inch fish and they'll come out and try to eat it off your line. Or like, even on this trip in Idaho, my buddy caught like a 20-inch bull trout, maybe just a tad under 20 inches. And a bigger bull trout came out and tried to eat the other bull trout off his line while it was fighting, because they're just like that aggressive.
Wow.
I had a guy when I was in Oregon, this old timer, we fished way too much of a river. Me and my buddy got back up on the road, and we were like, oh my goodness, dude, we have like a 10-mile hike back. And so we were like hitchhiking on the side of the road, and finally some old fisherman stopped and like let us in his truck and drove us back to where we'd parked. But he was telling us he'd done shocking surveys or something with Trout Unlimited at one of the tributaries where the bull trout spawn. Kept like young of the year to see how they were doing, whatever it was. I don't exactly remember what he said, but he said that every time they would like shock up like a little itty bitty, like 12-inch bull trout or something, they would put them in these buckets, but they had to put each bull trout in a separate bucket, because if they didn't, within 5 minutes, one of them would be trying to eat the other one.
Wow.
So they're just like this, like, yeah, they're this like hyper predatory, super aggressive fish, and they grow big, and they're, in my opinion, they're gorgeous fish. And like, they've been documented to travel like over 150 miles to spawn. And just like they're these crazy fish. And I just wanted to catch one. They've been on my bucket list for like years and years and years and years. So I went to Idaho specifically to fish for them. And got my butt kicked for the most part, if I'm being honest with you, just because they're just so migratory. And I didn't fully realize what I needed to do to find them until like the last 3 days of the trip. It finally like clicked in my head, and it was like, so this is what I needed to do to catch these fish. So I'm already like planning next year's trip. Like, it's already like partially planned for July. Like, I got a couple other buddies involved. Like, I'm like, listen, what if we all go up and have like a bull trout camp and like try to really figure these fish out? It's like someone told me this. It is like the most true thing ever, is that like bull trout fishing is like hunting. Like, it's the closest thing to hunting that I've done fishing, in that like is you just got to find them. They're not that, as I said, they're so aggressive. They're not that hard to catch if you can find them. Same thing as like when I go whitetail hunting. It's like if I can figure out where the bucks are, I usually can get a chance at one, or at least like be in the zone.
Right.
Dude, bull trout are the exact same way. Like I woke up the same way, like I wake up like on the first morning of like rifle season here in West Virginia, and I'm looking around, I'm like, what mountain should I really go up? Like, where's the buck sitting right now? And like, same thing when I'm bull trout fishing. I'd wake up, we'd be drinking coffee or an energy drink, and I'd just be like, how far up this river are the bull trout? Like, what are they thinking? What are they doing? Like, how can I not figure this out? It was very frustrating, but I caught a few, nothing super big by bull trout standards, but I caught a couple, and it was, I think the fact that it was so difficult made me want to fish for them even more, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what, in New Mexico, you went after the Gila trout?
Yes. Gila trout. I also caught some Rio Grande cutthroat, but Gila trout was the big one. Yeah.
So how did that trip go? Better than the bull trout trip, or?
Yeah, from a standpoint of catching the fish, just because like that one, they're rare, but as I said, they're only rare because they're only native to the Gila River. So like, and there's only so much water in the Gila River that I shouldn't say this, but I want to say that like a lot of them, they've just been hybridized with other fish, or they got stocked over, or they just extirpated for one reason or another. And I'm sure each little creek or river system is slightly different. But yeah, it was just finding them. Once we found the Gila trout, it was super easy. We fished 2 creeks. It was just like, I'd catch like 15, 20 fish in one hole. And then I would just be like, all right, well, I don't really know what else I'm accomplishing by sitting here, so I guess we'll just move on, you know?
Yeah.
And then Arizona, which I did on the same trip, I chased after Apache trout, which they were actually a little bit more difficult, but same thing. Once I found a creek that had them, it was just like every cast. I even like caught fish without the fly even touching the water. Like I would just hover the fly over top of the creek, and there were so many fish in the creek that they would see the fly hovering above them and think it was like a fly actually buzzing over the water, and they would jump out of the water and grab my fly.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
It's actually pretty fun.
Yeah. So like, yeah, when you're catching fish like that, that's, you know, it's not difficult fishing. That's for sure. I mean,
did you get any quick footage of that? Of them jumping out of the water?
Yeah, I got some footage of it. It was tough to film, but we got a couple really good clips of just the fish just jumping out of the water constantly trying to get they call it like dapping, I think. And it's like a technique where you like touch the fly to the water to get their attention, and then you lift it up. And like, I would literally do that, and I'd see like 5 or 6 Apache trout come up, and they would just be like, you could see them like their noses right under the surface of the water, just watching the fly, waiting to jump out when it came over top of them. It was really cool.
Yeah. That is really cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So you said you're going all these places. What research do you do to find these places? And then like when you get there, what do you decide to use to actually catch them?
Yeah, I mean, the Western Native Trout Challenge actually has like a bunch of maps and stuff that you can use to help find them. Some of the more rare fish, like the Gila trout or the Apache trout, and some of those, like, there's only like a handful of streams you can legally target them. And like the Gila trout, for example, they actually figured out, or they currently can reproduce them in a hatchery, like the native strain Gila trout. So some of the creeks, they even stock with them. So that's the easiest way for a lot of those fish, because a lot of them, like like the Arizona Fish and Game, or like the New Mexico Fish and Game, or whatever their state agencies are called, will literally be like, you can fish for them in these 4 creeks. And then it makes it super easy, because you're like, all right, well, I guess we'll go to one of them and just mark it off the list until we catch one, you know? But some of them, it's a little bit more difficult, like Idaho with bull trout. Like, as I said, like that was one where it was like, yeah, we'll tell you where they're at. Everywhere. Have fun, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, if it's like one of those things where it's like, you know, if I'm like deer hunting and someone's like, yeah, there's a white-tailed deer everywhere in the state of West Virginia, have at it. It's like, okay, well, now I'm overwhelmed. I don't know. I don't even know where to start. I don't know, like, because, you know, bull trout will be could be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Like they're in every river system, but they're only going to be, they might only be in the upper 10 miles or the bottom 10 miles or in their wintering grounds or in their summer water or whatever. Unless you know where that is, it doesn't matter. And in some states like Wyoming for the native trout, they won't. Some of the creeks I found by them just overtly saying like this creek was a reintroduction effort and they're doing great here. But like Wyoming, you look up like native ranges for the fish.
Yeah.
I might look up and be like, where's the Yellowstone cutthroat? What's their native range? And it's like, all right, this area, there's this river system is their native range. And then I would just go and like go to a small creek and just start fishing it. You're either going to like, sometimes you catch a brook trout or something that's not native and you're like, whatever, next, because there's no shortage of water to look for them. And sometimes like in California, I would look up like a lot of the game and fish departments will have like some amount of data. Like a lot of them, they do shocking surveys and all sorts of stuff. There'll be some amount of data on whatever fish you're targeting. Even just something as simple as like, I remember one of the creeks I fished for one of the cutthroat species. I literally found like a Trout Unlimited article from like 10, 15 years ago that was like talking about this reintroduction effort and all this work they were putting into one of the cutthroat streams. So then I like just did a quick Google of the stream and was like, can I fish blank stream? And it was like, yeah, it's actually great for cutthroat. And I was like, voila. And then I got there and they even had like a little survey. They're like, oh yeah, tell us how many cutthroat you caught and how big they were and stuff like that. So like you can find all this information like multiple different ways. Like rarely when I'm going out west am I fishing something that's like not easily found online. Because if it was hard to find, I probably wouldn't know about it. Because I don't have time to put in the legwork to find some super secret stream, So like if I'm finding the fish, it took me probably less than an hour of research to figure it out, or to write that stream down on a piece of paper and then see if it was publicly accessible and then go from there, which is a whole other thing when people get upset about someone fishing somewhere and like, this is my secret spot. And I'm like, dude, I found it in 15 minutes on Google. Like, you might want to find a spot that's a little bit more secret than that if that's what your secret spot is. But no, all this information's online somewhere. It's rarely are things truly a secret. Just because, as I said, a lot of stuff is like they do shocking surveys and stuff on it, and if you're willing to like dig through like raw data, then it can you'll find gold mines.
Gotcha. So when you come up to just let's say you find a piece of water and you walk up to it, what are the first kind of features you kind of look for to kind of start on a creek or a stream?
I mean, I look. It depends a lot on what I'm fishing for and stuff like that. Let's just say like a general like cutthroat stream in Wyoming. The first like initially like I'll just say for example like I was fishing for a Colorado River cutthroat in Wyoming, and I went through like 3 or 4 different creeks, which didn't even all make the video. That I would just walk up to and be like, no, I'm not fishing this. Like one creek I walked up to, the water was muddy, and I was like, it shouldn't be muddy. If it's muddy, they've got issues going on here. I don't know what they are, but the cutthroat aren't going to be here. And then another stream I went up to, and the water just didn't feel that cold. And if you're trout fishing and the water's not cold, it's, you might as well not even be there. So obviously cold, clean water is like the number one thing. I mean, like if you're in Colorado or something, or even Wyoming or Idaho, like there's no shortage of that. So then it kind of depends on what I'm fishing for. If I'm going after like cutthroat, I'll usually just go up to like the first, I'll give it maybe 2 to 3 runs or holes, depending on how the creek's set up. And I'll just throw like a dry fly in it. And if I'm not rising fish, like if fish aren't raising and looking at my dry fly, or I'm not catching them pretty quickly, I'll leave. Like I'm not, like with cutthroat, I'm not going to work that hard for them. I found that if it's a good cutthroat stream, you're going to find out really quickly. And unless it's like some fish that I'm like, like if it was a Gila trout, now there's only 3 streams I could fish for Gila trout, then maybe I'll fish something a little bit longer. But like if I'm just fishing for like a Colorado River cutthroat, then dude, if I don't catch one in the first hole or two, I'm like, all right, this is not the stream for me. I'll go to the next one, because there could be any number of issues on a stream that might prevent, the cutthroat from doing well. I don't know if that answered your question. I don't even remember what it was, to be honest with
you. No, you answered it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you answered it. So.
Yeah, I guess another thing I'd say that I'm looking for is like cover.
Yeah.
Fish, like trout, their main predators, they are the apex predator in the water, usually. The only exception is like if you're in Idaho and you have bull trout, then obviously the cutthroat get eaten by the bull trout. Or, maybe if you're fishing a stream that has some big brown trout in it, maybe they get hunted by the big brown trout. But usually like they are the big fish in the stream and most of the water that they occupy. So they're not worried about other things in the water, but birds are their number one predator. So like look for cover, like undercut banks, log jams, grass overhanging the creek, anything where those fish can sit underneath cover and not have to worry about like a bird coming through and eating them. That would be the other really good piece of advice.
There you go.
So when you pull up to a new spot, what like especially with like the pickier fish you mentioned, well, how do you decide what fly you're going to throw or what streamer you're going to throw, or do you just keep switching until you get lucky?
You switch a lot, but like there's like a handful of flies that are going to work pretty much everywhere. Or it'll at least have fish come up and look at it, and then you can adjust from there. Like I'll usually start out, like depending on the size of the creek, but usually I'll start out with something like slightly larger fly, like maybe like a stimulator, like I don't know, a hopper or something just slightly smaller, or slightly larger, like size 14 or size 12 or something, because that gets the fish's attention really quickly. So like if a grasshopper hits the water and there's a cutthroat in that stream, or a brown trout or any kind of trout in the stream, like they're almost foolish not to look at it, because they only have so many feeding opportunities. Right. So they might come out and look at it, and then like if a fish comes out and looks at it and denies it, I'm like, all right, usually in my mind I downsize. Then I'll go to like a Parachute Adams is a classic fly, works everywhere in the country. Get a size 16 Parachute Adams, and if they aren't eating that, then you start to have issues. And like I've been in places like in the eastern U.S. fishing for native brook trout, or even like in alpine lakes in Colorado or somewhere, where like the fish, like they're just feeding on something like a gnat, in which case you got to throw a gnat, unfortunately, which means you're throwing an itty bitty tiny fly. But like if you go up to an alpine lake in Colorado and you start to cast out and the fish are denying your fly, and you're throwing a size 16 or an 18 Parachute Adams, and like sometimes you have to adjust based on what the fish are telling you, I guess. Listen to the fish is really the biggest lesson. But yeah, you get used to it. Like the more you fly fish, the more you'll like walk up to a stream. Like you might walk up to a stream out west and be like, oh, like this has really grassy banks. I can probably throw a grasshopper and a fish will eat this grasshopper, because they are 100% eating grasshoppers. Or like if I'm out east and I'm native brook trout fishing, I can throw a Parachute Adams and they will eat a Parachute Adams, because they're just, that's like so close to like some of the blue-winged olives and different hatches that are coming off. Or like a elk hair caddis is another one. Classic fly, gets eaten everywhere in the country. Like there's a handful of flies that like, rarely do I have like some crazy special unique fly that I'm throwing at these fish. Usually it's just about like approaching the water correctly, and then like listening to the fish. As I said, I usually start a little bit larger, and then if they start denying me, I start downsizing as I go, like smaller fly. And then if they're denying the smaller fly, maybe I'll like change tippet. Like maybe I'll start off with like 4 or 5x tippet, and if they keep denying me, I'll drop down to like 6 or 7x just to see if that's the problem. But yeah,
for anyone that's like totally new is going to try this from listening to this episode. Also, some things that we've done is talk to the fly shop. Usually, I don't think I've ever gone in there and been like, hey, what's working in your area? And they've been like, we're not going to tell you.
Yeah.
It's their job to make money.
They want to sell flies. They'll tell you. They'll tell you about the dozen flies that you need to catch that fish, for sure. Yeah. No, I love fly shops. They've saved my butt a couple of times. even I've had fly shops literally be like, yeah, if you want to catch a fish like that, you're going to want to fish like this specific section of river. And then gone there and caught the fish they said I was going to catch, you know? So like I go into fly shops, like I'll go into a town and like, if I don't exactly know where I want to fish, I'll like literally just look at fly shops like that are in the area. And I'll go to like, if there's 3 fly shops in town, I'll go to all 3. And then just like listen to the info they give me. Like I'll go to one and they'll be like, oh, fish this creek. And then I'll go to another and they'll be like, you don't want to fish that creek, but this one's really good or whatever. Or if you, ideally all the fly shops are like, nah, I mean, if you really want to catch one of those fish, you're going to want to go to this creek. And I get 2 fly shops tell me the same thing. I'm like, I'll go check it out. You know?
Yeah.
But they'll give you some really good information. Really good information.
Yeah. That's
you
what.
should buy something from the fly shops too. Every time I go into one, I'll like either buy like a dozen flies, or I'll buy like some sort of a hat or something, just because you know they're small businesses too. So like they're trying to survive as well. I feel bad if I took information and didn't buy something.
Yeah. No, that's when we were in on the White River. They got a lot of rain that year, and it was out of its banks. And you know, Gunner's been up there a few times, and you know, it's like this is what I've used, and we were catching a couple, but it wasn't numbers like it usually is. And we ran to the fly shop downstream a little bit, and those guys were, I mean, they tried to sell us every fly they had, saying that's what was working, but
Yeah,
they dialed us in on some other stuff. And then one guy caught us outside as a guide and was like, listen, put your fly fishing stuff up, get the bass rods out. And what did he say to use? What was
He was telling us to use like jerk baits because it was so high.
Oh,
like,
of course. Yeah.
It was like 30 foot. It was like 30 foot high and like in bull shoals. So they were just rolling water out of the white.
Yeah, that's actually some of the best time to catch those bigger fish, because they're forced out of that main river channel and they have to sit up in the banks, like against the trees and stuff, because that's the only current break. And brown trout are super lazy, so they can't. If their spot down in the bottom of the river is getting ripped through by who knows how many thousand CFS, they're like, all right, only one other option for me, and that's to go to the bank.
Taylor had a big one on, and we were still sleeping. It was like, I mean, before daylight, like. Dark. And he hooked up to a fish, and I'm awake, but I hadn't rolled out of bed yet. And I hear him like he's just outside of camp because we were right on the water. So he just walked behind camp and just started fly fishing before we were up. I hear him like, guys, and he's trying to he hooks onto this brown trout, and there's like a snag, like a log underneath the water. He can't like get it over. It's just hanging. He just can't pull him over that snag.
Yeah.
And that fish ends up coming off. I'll tell you, that was probably the most upset I've seen this man. When he walked in that tent, he said, if one of you guys were out there, I could have done something. You could have helped me net that fish. But he got away because you guys didn't help me.
Dude,
I was mad.
If I hooked like a true giant on the white, dude, I'd swim for that thing. I do not care.
Well, it was the bank. I was waiting out in the water that was rolling over the bank, and I was like foot of water. Well, the bank was right there, and I couldn't get him to roll over that bank, and I couldn't get much closer because the water was just ripping through there. And the one little area he kept going to was kind of calm. And I was like, man, if someone was wake up, they could have a net right there, and but I could not get his. I mean, he was big, and he just kept coming up and flashing and just diving down. He was so big when I hooked him. I was like, oh my gosh, I snagged something down there. How did it sink that far down and snag something? And all of a sudden my pole and I was like, oh my word.
And like a dreamer or something, or
no, what were those? It was
I had switched to a scud at that point because that's what they said to throw.
Oh, so it was some sort of nymph.
It was like
a big jig.
We nymph a lot, and then we dry fly a lot. We don't do as much of the streamer fishing. I haven't.
Oh yeah, I did. The best day I ever had on the White River, I was nymphing. So I mean, sometimes that just works.
It's like a big fuzzy white jig they were calling the Ghost when we went to the
okay.
Arkansas, like the Arkansas minnow or something. I think.
It
was big.
Yes. I've never really seen him anywhere else, and he was like, I promise you. So we went back, and the next morning I tied one on early, and I mean it was. Then later on I hooked a smaller one, but not that first one he was legit.
Makes me want to go back to the White River. I haven't been there in years. But
Yeah, we have it. We went up there. Gunner used to go all the time, so he has all the intel for us. And then we went up there, and it was out of its banks, and it was rough fishing. So I want to go back and fish the way he talks about it, because we caught some, but it wasn't near what they do when they normally go.
yeah.
So, but
one time on the White River, the first time I ever got to the, well, not the first time I ever got to the White River, but I literally just drove there, and I got out of the car and I got up to one of like the river access points, and the water's pretty high, but nothing too crazy. And I had a streamer rod, and I had a streamer on. The streamer wasn't even wet, so it doesn't sink. It wasn't doing anything. I literally dropped it in the water at my feet, and I was stripping line off the reel so I could make a long cast. And I'm like stripping line off the reel, not even looking at my fly. And then I just hear this huge commotion, like right at my feet. It's like koosh, koosh. And I like look down to see the tail of a brown trout smack the water and dive back in. And just instinctively, I grabbed my line and set, because I was like, it had to have been going after my fly. And it did. It had come up and eaten my fly off the bank at my feet while I was trying to strip line off my reel. It wasn't like a giant. It was like, I don't remember. It may have been like 20 inches or 22 inches or something. It wasn't like a super giant brown by like White River standards. But I remember at the time I was just like, dude, this place is crazy. I didn't even get to do anything, and the streamer got eaten off the bank, you know?
yeah,
But that was pretty crazy.
Do you do a lot of streamer fishing?
Yeah, it's like, that's probably my favorite way to fish. Honestly, that's what I did in Idaho for the bull trout pretty much the entire time. Just because they eat other fish. That's their main forage. And that's just my favorite way to catch them, if I'm being honest. I mean, I could probably catch fish nymphing too, but it's so much cooler to see those giant brown, or those big browns or bulls or whatever it is, like come out like from the depths of the river or creek and smash a streamer. It just doesn't get any better than that. So
when you're fishing, I just told you about losing a big one. What would you recommend to do in situations to land bigger fish when you have them on?
So big fish are tricky. Like, unfortunately, and I've talked about this with my buddies before. They're just hard to land. Like, unfortunately, the best way to learn how to land big fish is to hook a bunch of big fish and fail a lot. And then at some point you start to learn, like, if I hook a big brown and there's a log that big brown can go into, unless it's unwaitable, I'm going and I'm walking straight to the log jam, because I'm trying to spook the fish away from its cover. Like, so I put my body between like log jams and the fish, like tricks like that. Or like, in a perfect scenario, the fish doesn't really have anywhere to go other than maybe like an undercut. And like, sometimes I'll even like, there's one 25-inch brown trout I caught in a little creek in West Virginia. And I hooked the fish and I was like, I'm probably screwed. The only chance I had is if the fish just didn't fully clock what was happening. So I literally kneeled down, I got on my knees and just put side pressure on the fish. And I was just trying to get as low as possible so that the fish didn't panic. And eventually I just was like trying to like put enough side pressure on the fish that it eventually just was like, I guess I'll get in the net. I don't know. And it took me maybe 10 minutes, but I eventually landed the fish and it never even made one run. Didn't do anything. Essentially just sat in one spot until I coaxed it into the net. So things like that covers your, as you said, that White River story. You said that brown kept trying to go towards the log. White River's a big river, so that's a tough one. But if you could have gotten over there near that log or something to like put your body between the fish and the log, or, something to get that fish to not want to go over there. Or another trick you can do in log jams sometimes, or undercut banks, is side pressure is key. So like if a fish tries to dive underneath something, drop your rod tip really low and just hold on and just hope that your like knots are good and everything's good. And just put a lot of side pressure on the fish and try to keep them out of it. A lot of times when I'm fishing for like really big fish, I'm like putting on pretty heavy tippet and line. Like when I was going after bull trout, I mean, like, I don't think I used less than 16-pound test, or the equivalent in tippet. Same thing with when I'm going after big browns or something. I'm using like heavy line so that if I do hook that giant fish, at least in my mind, I'm more comfortable just holding on and hoping, and there's always a moment in like a big fish battle. There's sometimes multiple moments, regardless of how many times you've hooked big fish, or regardless of what line you have on or what rod you have or what gear. There's always at least one, if not two moments where you're just like you can you could like feel the rod bending in the cork, and like, or the line is just like it's stretching out, or like, oh gosh, the worst thing is when it starts to like pull into something and you can feel that line ticking on a log or a rock or something. You're like, no, it's gonna, there's always a moment or two like that, and you just kind of gotta ride it out. And like, I wish I could say there's like a super obvious answer, but unfortunately every battle's different usually, and you just kind of got to feel it out. And the more you hook big fish, the more you get like this idea of like, okay, so like, I hooked this fish and the first thing it wanted to do is run towards the log jam. And then like, this spring I had one of my buddies hooked a 25-inch brown trout, and he's a very experienced fly angler. And I told him after he landed the fish, I was like, you were one of like the 1% that would have landed that fish. Because he hooked it, the fish ran downstream, he kept it above him. Then he literally swam across the creek to like get between the fish and a log jam. And like, it still got into the log jam at one point, and he did like the perfect side pressure and like pushed his rod in and looped it out of the log jam. And like, he did things that most people would have just been like, it's gone, But he stuck with it. He was like, nope, it's still on. I know it is. And he just kept following the fish. So yeah, you got to feel it out sometimes. A lot of times it is touch and go.
One of my favorite experiences one time was up in Colorado, and we were with Tanner Rust, who we've talked about a little bit in the past of this podcast, but we're fishing a hole, and he's like, hey, if you guys catch a big one here, it's going to try to hit the rapids and go down. Like, he's like, if you can stop it, you're good. But if you don't stop it, you can either do one or two things: swim across this deep hole and run downstream with them, or just let it run its course, and you probably won't get the fish. And I was like, okay. It was like the second cast. I mean, what, bam. And it was right as I was about to pull it back in and recast. And I mean, it was at the last second he hit it. And I knew when I felt it, I was like, man, that's a big fish. That's the biggest one I felt. And I think it's my second year. Yeah, it was my second year up there.
Yeah.
And I instantly just jumped across that river and swam across it, holding my stuff up, and went down. I think I swam and floated like 100 yards with this fish until I could touch again. And I started touching. And when I was floating, I saw a little area that got real wide and real smooth. And I remember swimming all that, getting down there. And I mean, I looked back, and 2 steps behind me, Tanner Rust was there. And I was like, what in the world? And I thought everyone probably left me and gave up on me.
Yeah.
And we netted that fish, and it was a team effort. I mean, that was my second year to ever fish, and my first time ever to run into fish that big. Yeah. And I remember we netted him. You thought we'd have caught the state record. And I mean, he was a big rainbow. If you see the pictures, I mean, he's just got girth. He's huge. He's long. We didn't do measurements or anything because I knew that fish had been worn out from the fight and let him go. Sure. But man, that thing was dipping and dodging things, trying to hit every little thing. And I don't know how I finally got it in, but as soon as I let him go, I was like, all right. So I was pulling all my line in, and I was just roll casting, just pulling all this line in from the fight and making sure everything is all right. And I was about to check my knots. And lo and behold, I just roll cast. And Tanner's like, you got one. You hit. And I was like, what? And, I hit again. And I pulled him. He's a little smaller, but I got him beating that in no time in that little area. But he was just a hair smaller. And that was like the highlight of that trip, because back to back, I just fought one really hard, and this other one was like in seconds I had it in. Yeah, it was pretty cool watching them. Like, I'm like, is this cool seeing like instantly what they knew to do to get away from, trouble. And it was.
Yeah, the fish has probably been hooked a time or two.
Yeah.
That's what that tells you.
Yeah.
But I mean, most of them are. I mean, if a fish if a brown trout's like, 24 inches long, or I don't know, like when fish start to get to like that upper size range, like those fish could be a decade old. You think another angler hasn't hooked that fish in 10 years? You know what I mean? Like, they're not. Yeah. I read somewhere or saw somewhere is like people were saying that like a lot of times as like fly anglers or anglers in general, we give like way too much credit to the fish. Like they're not that smart. You know what I mean? Like if they've gotten big, they usually have like a habit that has enabled them to live longer. Whether that habit is like sometimes like big browns, the biggest browns are nocturnal. You know, same thing when like you're deer hunting, you know, like the biggest bucks might be nocturnal, or like the biggest deer might just have happen to live in a piece of public or a land that no one hunts, or like lives on a piece of private that no one's ever hunted before, or in the middle of town or something. And like it's the same with like a big fish. Like a big fish might have gotten big because it just lives really far from the parking lot and not as many anglers fish for it. Or maybe it's nocturnal, or maybe it just lives underneath a cut on a bank that like people just walk past because they don't think it's going to produce a fish. Like rarely is it because they're like super geniuses, you know? I mean, so but that's usually why fish, you know, you hook a big fish and it immediately runs to an undercut. It's because like every time it runs to that undercut or tries to run downstream or whatever it may be, it survives. It breaks off or pops the hook or something. And it's just like, okay, cool. Like there was one huge brown trout that my brother and I messed with for like multiple years. Gigantic fish. One of the biggest brown trout that we've ever like tried to catch. I mean, it was in West Virginia. Never did catch the fish, but it did this thing. It sat on the inside of this current seam in really, really shallow water. So like, I don't think most people would even fish for it where it was, which I think is, you know, why it was getting so big, or why that just happened to be where it fed. And I think most people just ignored it or spooked it. Probably. We figured out that where it sat just by pure luck one day. And then, but we learned that every time we hooked this fish, the first thing it did, we'd hook into it, huge splashes, giant fish. I'm talking this fish, you know, could have been, who knows? I don't know. Gigantic. The first thing it would do once it got hooked and regained its composure is it would swim straight towards us. Like as fast as it could swim, it'd be like, boom, closes all the way. It's at your feet and swim past you. And the problem was, as you know, when you're fly fishing, there's no good way to get the line in quickly.
Yeah.
So we're stripping in the line as fast as you can. But like when that fish swims at you with the current, it's introduced slack to the line. And then what it would do is it'd go past our feet and start shaking its head. And by the time we caught up with it, it was gone already.
Holy cow.
And it did that, crazy. I think 3 separate times we had that fish do that. And we know it was the same fish, same spot. And the fish was just like so astronomically large that it, you know, it couldn't. There's no way there was that many fish that were that big that sat in that run. So it was the same fish, and it did the same thing every time, and we never did catch the fish.
Wow.
So like that was just an example of a fish that like, and I don't think that brown trout was sitting there like, yeah, dude, like every time I get hooked, I just run right towards these fools. They can't handle it. But I think that like he would come out in that shallow bank to eat. And then like when he did eat, or when he felt like he was in trouble, he tried to get to his next piece of cover, which was like down past us to our right, like against an undercut bank. So I think that just naturally when we hooked the fish, it tried to get right back to its piece of cover, which meant it had to swim straight towards us for a ways and kind of go past us almost to get to where that was. And so the fish just happened to have like this perfect scenario, and we never did catch the fish. So
how long did you go after it? Was it like a couple years or?
Yeah, that fish, I think it was like 3 years.
Wow, that's cool.
We would see it every now and then, but I haven't, it's probably dead now. It was too big. It was probably towards the end of it. I mean, when a fish get that big, any spawn could be the end of it. You know, like those fish, they're probably over a decade old, and they're just, you know, one bad year and it's like they're chalked usually. But yeah, there's been a couple fish like that though. I mean, there's a couple fish right now that I've been working on that like I think I know generally where they live because I've seen them there multiple times over the course of the last year or so. But like I can't catch them, or I've hooked them once or twice and they popped, or like every once in a while, like as soon as I'm like, I think that fish might just be gone, then it'll just pop its head out one time and look at my streamer and then shoot right back. And I'm just like, okay, you're still there. You know, I have like a hard drive on my computer of like, it's called like, I don't know, what is this? What is this hard drive called? Big Fish. It's called Big Fish. And then in the Big Fish thing, I click on it, and like we have like silly names for them. So we're like, oh, this is Twofer. We had one called Poseidon. This is Zeus. We just name them stupid names, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just so like we can keep track of the fish. And like, it'll just be like GoPro footage of the times that I've like either failed or like moved the fish or something under the guise that one day, if I do happen to catch the fish, I can be like, oh, this is like the history of me, like
that's an awesome
trying and failing to catch this trout.
Yeah, that's cool. I've never thought about that, having like history with the fish. That's freaking
That is
sweet.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
You can do it pretty easily with brown trout, because brown trout are notorious homebodies. So they'll like a lot of brown trout, not all brown trout, but a lot of brown trout will have like a certain area that they run. Like that's their home. Like it can be super small and specific, like a brown trout that lives in a log jam, or they could run like 100-yard stretch at creek. But like brown trout are notorious for that. So like, you know, if you go and you catch like a 2-foot brown trout in a log jam in a river, there's a good chance that that's where that fish lives, unless it's during like the times that changes. Like if it's in the fall and it's like pushing up somewhere to spawn, then like obviously that fish doesn't live there. It might just be trying to get to where it's going to spawn for the year or something. But like if you're seeing a fish in like June or something, there's a good chance that fish just flat out, that's just its home. So you can like build up history with fish. And sometimes they move over time, you know, like you catch a fish moving in a different spot, but like generally, you know, we've caught the same fish over the years multiple times in a row. Like caught the fish, released it, and then like we've caught some fish like 2, 3, 4 times.
Yeah.
Like a year apart a piece. You can watch them grow. Like I have a buddy who just like, he keeps track of fish really well. And I'll like, every time I catch like a really big fish, I'll send him a picture of it and he'll be like, yeah, you know, I caught that fish, or you caught that fish, or your brother caught that fish back in like 2022 and it was 20 inches then, you know.
How does he keep track of?
Brown trout, like the fingerprint of a brown trout is their spot patterns. Like not all like they're usually, all of them are pretty distinct. Some of them can be kind of close, but they'll have like a handful of like telltale spots that'll be like, you know, like, oh, this one has like 3 spots like really close together on its gill plate. Like that's a really weird marking for that fish. Or maybe this one has a scar sometimes, so it'll be like that. Or but it's usually a weird spot pattern or something. And like you could start to like, it's usually pretty obvious. Like you'll catch a fish and look at it, and like if you really look at the spot patterns, be like, okay, 3 spots, 2 spots, 1 spot, and then you look at like 3 spots, 2 spot, 1 spot, and then you go to like just pick any random spot on the fish, and it'll be like, all right, let's see if these 3 spots line up, and they'll line up. You know,
wow, that's crazy to be able to keep track. I mean, I'm that friend, you know, Gunnar will send me a picture of a deer, and I'm like, look at this one. I'm like, hey, 2 years ago you had a picture like that, or I'm like, a year ago I had a picture of him. Here he is. And I have other people that send me pictures, and they'll, you know, 3 years later send me a picture and be like, look at this buck that showed up. And I'm like, he didn't show up 3 years ago. Look in our Snapchat. We saved it. I bet it's him. And you start looking, you're like, holy cow, it is him.
Yes, it's very crazy. Similar. The only difference is with a fish, you can catch it and look at it and take pictures. The only thing you got to watch with the fish is like, if you happen to take a picture on the wrong side,
oh yeah,
and then you're screwed, because you can't. There's no way, you know, the spots are different on both sides. So like, if you took it facing right one day and then like a year later caught the same fish and it's facing left, there's nothing you can do about that, unfortunately.
Do you guys take pictures like the same direction every time for that reason when they're browns? Or
I mean, I would love to say that we do, but not purposely. I think naturally we tend to like, I don't know, we're right-handed, so we tend to hold it up a certain way. But like, a lot of times it doesn't line up, unfortunately. But yeah, my brother's biggest fish, which was like a 28-inch brown trout or something like that, I had caught 3 years prior, 2 miles away, or approximately, I don't exactly remember the mileage now, miles away. And the fish was 2 inches shorter. So in 3 years, the fish had moved, I don't remember, 2 or 3 miles downstream and had grown 2 inches. And it was just pure luck. I was looking through my pictures one day and I was like, wait a minute. And like I got up, I brought them both up on my computer screen, and I was just like looking at them, like overlaying them, and I was like, "That's the same dang fish, dude. That's
Yeah.
crazy." You know. So yeah.
Is that common? Was that a brown?
Yeah, it was a brown trout. Yeah.
Is that common for a fish to grow 2 inches in, well, you said 3 years or 2 years?
3 years. It depends on where you're at. Some places have really high growth rates. Some places don't. This particular area has a pretty high growth rate usually. So, I mean, we've had some crazy blow ups on fish that like I've even questioned before whether it was the same fish, but the spots seemed to line up where it was like caught it 1 year and it was like 19 inches. And then like a year and a half later and it's 23. And you're like,
Golly.
how is that even possible? But you get like a really good water year. Like flooding is awful for people, but for trout that just knocks so much food in the water. If you get like a really good like high water year, like consistently high water, preferably not like blowout floods, but just good consistent rain, and like you don't have like a really hot dry summer, or you don't have a winter that's like the water's freezing, then fish can grow pretty quickly. Or you have like this past year we had a cicada hatch, something like that. Like you get cicadas on the water, those fish gorge themselves. They look like footballs for 2 or 3 months. Like they quickly put that into length, you know. So you know, they can grow pretty quickly or really slowly. It depends.
So when I got another question about kind of tactics. When you start going out with like newer people or first timers, what are some mistakes you see that they do that you would advise other people? Like, what's some of the main mistakes you see that you would advise other people not to do? Jeez.
I'd say, I guess, impatience. I mean, it depends. Like, if they've like never been fishing before, then it's just can be something as simple as like reading the water, like even knowing where the fish are going to sit in like a creek or a river. If they've been fishing before, but they just haven't been fly fishing before, it can be just something as simple as patience, or just like even just learning when to move on. I see a lot of times I see new anglers like go up to a piece of water and they just want to sit in the same hole because they're like, I know there's a fish in here, I'm going to catch it. And I'm like, that's not how that works. Like, if the fish ain't eating, he's not eating, and there's nothing you can throw at it. It doesn't matter. Like, just move on. Like, find that active fish. So things like that. I mean, I'm trying to think of something else that's like super obvious. As I said, I think reading the water and sitting in one spot too long are two things that I see anglers do a lot. Oh, also getting the fly down to the fish. You guys talked about nymphing earlier, like on the White River and stuff. If your fly is not getting down to where the fish are, they're probably not going to eat it. Like, it seems like it's like, well, duh. But like really think about it. Like, if you're fishing a hole that's 5 feet deep and you only have 3 feet of line out, you're asking that fish to move 2 feet to eat your fly. And if there's lots of food in that system, like if they're sitting there and they only have to move a foot one direction or the other to eat something, why would they move 2 feet for your fly? They're not going to. Like, you got to get the fly down to the fish. Or like if you're throwing dry flies and the fish are eating like a caddis and you're throwing like a size 10 grasshopper and you're wondering why you're not catching fish. It's like, just really like, it should be just stupid, simple things. But I've noticed that sometimes new anglers just don't pick up on it, or they just don't even realize that they're doing something wrong because, I don't know, they got the fly from the fly shop or something. Like, I've seen people come up to me like, I got this fly from the fly shop, it should work. And then I looked at it, I'm like, no, not in this water condition. Like, that fly would work if the water was low and clear, but right now the water's high and you're going to need a lot more weight, or you're just going to be shooting right over the fish. They're not going to know you're fishing for them. You know, just things like that.
So if someone is to ask you today, like, what would like, if you got offered a trip of your lifetime, it was your dream fishing trip, what would it be?
Right now, the thing that's probably like, I'd say probably the highest on my list right now is to go after taimen in Mongolia, which is they're another like bull trout-esque, like actually I don't know if they're a char or not. They might just be like a salmonid, like a trout or something, but they get gargantuan. They're huge. They live in these big river systems and they're just like this giant trout species. I think they're like the biggest trout species in the world. And they're just like, you should see the pictures of these fish. I mean, they're just like,
I'm looking at them.
If you ever seen like a muskie, like how big the muskies are, they're like that type of, yeah, exactly.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's a trout.
Yeah.
And they're native to like the Mongolia areas, like the main place. There's also like some other fish that are like, I think they're like related maybe or something that are in like maybe like the Italy area and some of those rivers around there that I would like to catch too. Those are like the big, like if someone was like, I'll give you a free trip somewhere, I would probably go with that just because that's just like mind blowing to me that those fish get that big and they're just like a trout species.
What's the farthest you've traveled for a trout?
I've gone to California, so across the country. I've never like left the country or anything for trout yet. Although I'm sure I'll probably do that within the next year or two. It's just, there's so many places to fish in America. It's like, why would I leave right now?
Yeah.
You know, like we have so much public water. Like we're so blessed to have so much public water and so many places to fish in America that it's like, you know, it almost seems foolish to leave unless like, you know, like the Timon's a good example. There's a lot of cool fish like in like the Italian Alps that are really cool that are native out there. I think it would be cool to catch like a native brown trout, and brown trout are actually native to England. Like they're not native to America. So it'd be cool to like catch them in their native range, you know, just to see where they came from and stuff. But like, having said that, I haven't even like, I've barely scratched some things off the list in America.
Yeah.
So, and that's a lot cheaper to travel to, you know, Idaho than it is to go to Mongolia for 10 days. That's for sure.
Yeah.
In a year, like how many trips do you go in a year, and like how long are they?
Well, so I have an agreement with my wife that I will only take one trip a month, and I've stuck to that. I think I've maybe missed 1 month. So I think I've probably gone on like 6 trips this year, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did Erie, I did Oregon, Wyoming, Idaho, New Mexico, Tennessee. I don't remember, but like 6 or 7 trips. So I try to do like 1 trip a month, give or take. Some of the trips aren't super long. Like they'll just be like, I said Tennessee. Like Tennessee is only 3 hours from me. So that's not crazy. Or like I did Erie Steelhead. That's a whole other, if you want to take some people off, call Erie Steelhead, dude. That is something you don't want to get into, boy. But like Erie's only like 5-6 hours from me. So like, that's like a glorified weekend trip really, but it's still fun. So yeah.
What's
I
your
gotta
longest
ask.
trip? Oh,
No, you can ask him that. Then I got my question after that.
okay. What's your like longest trip been? Like a week, 2 weeks?
I usually do around 10 days.
10 days.
Because I find that like right around the 10-day mark, I'm kind of over it anyways. I've either accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, or like I'm just sick and tired of like sleeping on the hard ground in like 30-degree weather and stuff. Like on the last trip to Idaho, I got sick. I had like a sprained ankle. It was just like by day like 9 or 10, I was like, dude, I just want to like sleep in my own bed and like relax a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's fun. Like I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it is hard. Like it's hard on your body when you're doing those types of trips. So like you got to learn when to just be like, all right, I need to like take a break and like relax. And rarely on those trips am I relaxing because like I have a goal that I'm trying to like accomplish to some degree. So yeah.
So what are your feelings? Because I heard you made a comment in I believe your bull trout video. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are your feelings about stocked fish?
Oh gosh, this is another can of worms, dude. I'll tell you that. So like, I mean, my first fish were stocked fish, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I think that stocked fish have a great place. And I think like, for example, in a state like Oklahoma, where there are no trout fishing opportunities, wonderful. Have at it. But I will never understand why state agencies put stocked trout in places where there's already wild or native fish. Like it does nothing but suppress the native population of fish and bring more pressure to the water that like, quite frankly, like I had people argue this. I had some guys comment on the Idaho video, they were like, I don't understand, like the stocking these fish here in this river, like keep the pressure off the native fish. I'm like, in what world? Like, you know how many people go like with just like live bait and like with like little to no knowledge maybe on what a native fish even looks like in that river system, go and keep the fish? Like, and not only that, but like just with my personal experience in like West Virginia, for example, there's a couple like top tier wild trout fisheries that they stock over, and it gets the living crap beat out of it by people like throwing live bait and chucking worms and stuff, which like, fine, I don't care. I've chucked worms in my life too, but like they could at least put those fish in a place where it's not going to kill or harm the native or wild trout population in the process. And like, I get to watch, like, because I fish these rivers year round, I get to watch the rivers like when all the stock trout are gone, like the brown trout or the native brook trout or whatever it may be, like sit out in these big runs. They're happy. They're sitting where they need to be, yada, yada, yada. And then stocking season comes, and all of a sudden, all these fish, all these big fish, sometimes a big brown trout, maybe it's native brook trout, whatever it may be, are pushed up into like these tiny runs. And like, I find that like brown trout are notoriously lazy fish. They don't like whitewater. But I found that after they stock, all the wild fish, like literally I've caught wild brown trout in like ripping whitewater. And the only explanation for that is that there's so many like, you know, stocked like pellet head fish sitting in the main run that they can't even eat. So they're forced to go up, because wild fish can sit in whitewater because they have the muscle mass to do it because they've grown up there. So they use the advantage of them being able to sit in the whitewater to literally just feed. And you can't tell me that that's not like negatively affecting the wild trout population in that river.
Yeah.
If the fish literally have to transition into different runs to avoid the stock trout. And like, we're not even going to get into the point that like the average angler in West Virginia probably doesn't even know the difference between a wild brown and a stocked brown anyway. So then people are catching wild trout and keeping them, or catching like native brook trout and keeping them because they don't know. Like they'll catch like a really big, like a 12-inch native brook trout's a giant native brook trout. And every year you'll see them on stringers, you know, on the local Facebook page, because people just don't know. And you can't blame them for not knowing. But it's like, if we just put like like if a state fish and game agency looked at some of these rivers and thought, you know what, we'll stop stocking them here. Like, I'm not saying like keep the same poundage being stocked, but like stock it in a river that doesn't support trout. It's not like it's, you know, we have rivers in West Virginia that like are cold enough to support trout, but like they have acidity issues. So the fish can't reproduce in them. Throw them in there because they can't reproduce anyways. Let them be. And then take these like really like top tier, like gold medal wild trout streams and leave them alone, or put a catch and release reg on them and watch. And like, I bet it would be like within a decade, it would be there's a couple creeks and rivers that I'm thinking of off the top of my head that would probably produce giant browns within 10 years. There'd be people catch enormous fish out of these rivers. But they can't even, half the fish can't make it that, like every once in a while you hear someone catching like a 26, 28 or bigger brown out of some of these places. And it's like, and it's always some guy that like caught it and they see it on a stringer. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, it's a miracle the fish even got to that size and wasn't caught before that and kept, you know? So I have nothing against stocked trout. I just wish it was done in like a slightly more responsible manner. And like, I don't know much about this, but I've seen people like posting about PA. PA has like another place where like they have massive issues with like wanting to stock trout over like in like class A wild trout streams. It's like, for what reason? There's literally like, there's not even a good reason for it. Because a lot of these wild trout streams, you could still catch and keep the fish. There's no one stopping you from doing it. There's, you know what I mean? So like, you could still go there and catch your limit of wild fish if you wanted to. And a lot of those places, they can support it pretty easily. If anything, it would probably benefit the stream if some fish were kept from time to time. So it's like, I don't know. I've yet to hear like a good argument for like stocking some of these streams. It just doesn't make sense to me, other than, you know, we've always done it, so we're always going to do it, because if we don't, someone's going to get mad. It's like, brother, come on. It's such a cop out in my opinion, but you know, it's not my job either. So
no, we run across stuff like that with like noodling down here in Oklahoma.
Mhm.
So, you're catching these fish during breeding season.
Yeah.
And people are ripping out 50, 60-pound flatheads full of eggs and taking them home, taking pictures with them. And I'm like, dude, why couldn't you just let that mama go to reproduce? Because now we're like, one lake in particular, Gunner and I could have gone 6-7 years ago and caught, a couple 40s, 50s, run into 60s. And now, like, everyone's taking a picture with a 15-pound, 10-pound flathead, just, 5, 6 of them they ripped out in a day.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is why, 6-7 years ago, we can go there and rip out some giants, take pictures and release them. And now you guys just can't. It's like, it's mind boggling how many.
Oh, dude.
Like, there's one, it's crazy because I can put one guy in particular on my Snapchat, and it was like every day he had a fish out there. And I'm like, that's one guy that I know of. How many others are doing it? And it's just, especially when there's blues that are breeding like rabbits in our waters that produce a wider meat. And I'm like, I don't understand. People are going to fight back. Oh, feeding our family. Well, it's easier to catch blues in channels than it is big flatheads. Like, give them a chance.
Oh, dude, we have people like the crowd in West Virginia is like the guys that'll be like, I paid for my license. I deserve my limit. And it's like, golly, what are we talking about? Like, how much is I know that the license is like $20-$30. You know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about? Yeah, you have to get a trout stamp. That's another $20 or whatever it is. I don't know what it is off the top of my head now, but like, it's just, why are we complaining over like something that like, dude, if you go to Walmart, you're going to spend more than that for like 2 meals.
Yeah.
So like, let's not pretend like you deserve to catch 6 fish every single day for the entirety of stock season, and that you have to fish like this one creek because why? You know what I mean? Like, you could drive 20 minutes and fish a creek that like, they could stock and it wouldn't negatively affect a native trout population,
And it wouldn't be.
Like, admittedly, that's also like my like hierarchy of fish is that like, I think that like the native fish should like take precedence. Like, if there's native fish in like that stream, then like they should be protected because they're the ones that are disappearing. We have brown trout and rainbow trout everywhere. There's nowhere in the country you can't catch a brown trout or a rainbow trout, but there's only a handful of places in the country that I can catch a native brook trout. So like, why are we putting these pellet head fish over a native population that like we see decreasing year over year because of habitat loss and stuff like that, and further increasing the habitat loss or even like hybridizing them with other fish, like other non-native brook trout, just because we want to catch our limit of fish? Like, there's so many more better ways to do this than that. And I feel like there's got to be a compromise at some point because it's just, it doesn't make sense. And then like Idaho was even more mind blowing to me. Brought up the bull trout video because like, when I tell you that like you could sit in a hole and catch 20 cutthroat in every single hole, in every single creek, in every single river we went to, I'm not joking. I mean, the easiest, most silliest fishing I've ever had for cutthroat in my life. So for someone to be like, we like this is taking the pressure away from like the native trout population. It's like, dude, the native trout population is flourishing. It's doing wonderful. It's doing better there than like anywhere else in the country, arguably. And I'm not saying that like that means that you should like keep a bunch of native cutthroat, but like, let's not pretend like they're stocking these fish in like struggling cutthroat fishery, or like that there are fish or like these creeks are like struggling fish wise. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you catch 20 cutthroat and then a stocked rainbow trout. It's like, for what? It's ugly. It doesn't look pretty. They don't fight. It's just like, dude, I do not get it. I don't get it.
That first fish on his Idaho video, he's like, I'm just gonna hop out and see if I can't catch fish real quick. And he got that stalker.
I caught a stocked rainbow trout.
And he goes, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I was like, whatever, dude. And I said in the video, like, I don't think they should stock this, but that's another conversation. That's a conversation for another day. And I already had 3 comments of people who were like, well, I think that you're an idiot. And I'm like, dude, for real? This is the hill you're going to die on, is that they should stock over the native cutthroat trout? Like, you can't possibly be serious. It's mind blowing to me. I don't get it. But as I said, my first fish ever was a stock trout, but it was a stock trout out of a creek that has no wild reproducing fish.
Yeah. And in those wild streams, also, I mean, it puts pressure on them to, forage. If you really, I mean, that
Yeah.
part of it's big
Well, I mean,
too.
think about this. Like a stream can only support so many fish, depending on what the bug life is like. So like if a river or a creek is at a natural like level of native trout or wild trout, like let's say it's wild browns, and like there can be 2,000 fish in a mile of creek or river, whatever it is. And that's how many wild browns are in there. And they're feeding, and they reproduce, and that's what they have. And then every spring they dump 2,000 more trout in there in that same mile stretch. Someone's not getting fed, and you could argue that it's likely going to be the stocked fish, but that stocked fish are still taking food from the wild trout. So now all of a sudden those wild trout they can't feed that much. So now like you're looking at a creek, and it's like if you throw stocked trout in there, either the wild trout or there's going to be less reproduction in that stream or more die off from wild trout because the creek can no longer support that many wild trout, or you're going to see like they're a hard cap at how big they'll get, because all spring when they should be putting on weight and should be growing, they are, forced to like only feed at night, or they can only feed during certain times, or they have to really work to get food. So all of a sudden, like a stream that might produce a 24-inch fish now is only going to produce an 18-inch fish. And it's like, I feel like if you explain that to more people, it would maybe change like that narrative of like, yeah, but I got to keep my limit. It's like, no, you don't understand. If you would like let the wild trout do their things, you could probably go catch and keep your limit anyways. And the fish would look better. They'd probably taste better, like
be bigger,
get bigger. Like it would be a much more fun fishery if you weren't catching like a stub-nosed rainbow every other cast. It's like, I don't get it, man. I don't get it. But I'm also fortunate to like be able to travel around and catch a bunch of native fish and like see what fisheries look like that don't get stocked. So in my defense, I might be slightly biased towards a wild fish or wild trout system, but just because that's what I like. But
did you know that first stretch was stocked? Did you know that area was stocked?
I had no idea. I didn't know what was in that. Well, I mean, I knew generally what was in the river because it's kind of the same throughout most of Idaho. It changes a little bit because unfortunately a lot of the like that western area there, like Washington, Oregon, even Idaho has like some dams on them. So like if you go to like we saw Chinook salmon and stuff on the rivers that aren't dammed that came literally from the Pacific Ocean. But a lot of those rivers are dammed. So if they're dammed, then you're like, well, there's probably some bull trout that live in the lake and push up, and there's always going to be West Slope cutthroat. And then on the rivers that aren't dammed, you might catch like some like little red bands or steelhead smolt or something. And then the ones that are dammed kind of just, who knows? Apparently stocked rainbows. But no, I didn't know. My buddy was like, this looks like a stocked fish. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way I could travel all the way to Idaho and I caught a freaking stocked rainbow trout. But no, it was a stocked rainbow trout. Yeah. So
that's great. So going forward, what are your plans for the year? Do you keep trucking during the fall? Do you slow down? What does that look like?
I mean, I've got a few other plans. Like I'd like to go up and chase like the salmon in like the New York area. I'll probably make one Erie steelhead trip this fall, winter before I call it quits. There's also a small chance I go to Oregon before the end of the year. I'm not 100% sure. That entirely depends on my buddy. But typically during the fall, I slow down. I don't do as much, mostly because I start deer hunting. And once I start deer hunting, all else goes out the window. For usually it's like October, November, maybe some of December, depending on if I've gotten a deer or not. Also think we might be elk hunting this year, possibly. Might try to do like an over-the-counter like gun tag in Colorado maybe or something. I don't know. We haven't actually made the plans, so who knows if that'll actually happen. But yeah, as I said, like usually in the fall, I slow down a little bit just because also a lot of the fish spawn, like brown trout, brook trout are spawning, mole trout are spawning. A lot of the fish that I like to chase start to spawn, and I just would rather not fish for them during the spawn, just let them do their thing. And while they're doing that, I will be deer hunting. So, yeah.
So anyone that's listening, where can they find your YouTube and Instagram, Facebook, or any other pages that you share your content to?
It's all Hardman Fishing Adventures. So if you go up on YouTube, Hardman Fishing Adventures, Instagram, Hardman Fishing Adventures, I hope. Facebook, I think, is also Hardman Fishing Adventures. If you search that, it should pop up. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Then I'll definitely post all those below. And then what was the nonprofit you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, it was a Western Native Trout Initiative. They're a super cool organization that, as I said, I'm pretty sure they put on the Western Native Trout Challenge, and you can donate to their page, and all their proceeds, I believe, just goes to different. They have a really cool Instagram page, and they're always posting about all these cool like conservation type things they're doing for various Western Native trout. So yeah, for sure, support them if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll put all your socials linked below. I'm also going to put that nonprofit you just mentioned. I'll put their link below for anyone listening, for make it a little easier on you, so you don't have to go type stuff in. I'll do all the hard work for you. But John, thank you for joining us today and talking about fly fishing and giving us a little tips and tricks and some of your stories.
Of course, it was fun being on, guys.